All right, hello and welcome, folks, to a very spooky edition of RSF Radio. I'm going to need some help on this spooky, terror-filled night. I'm not going to make it through if I don't need some help from my friends. And on the mic with me, I have a very special guest, Paul Meyd, a.k.a. Dr. Stantz, is how you might know him. How you doing? Are you spooked? Are you scared yet?
Pretty spooked right now. Yeah, having Joe Monday on a Tuesday. I'm scared. Let's do this.
I know. Tuesdays are a fucking nightmare. They're certainly a blow up. Trust me.
It's like 5 p.m. California time. It's so bright out. I see a palm tree. Ugh.
No, it's the dead of night, which actually I'm bummed out for the video. I record, for people who just listen to the podcast version, I record the video as well just as a backup, and I didn't change the light to spooky lighting. I should turn down the lights and have a candle. But then I'd have a candle near my beard, and this motherfucker's oiled up and ready to just go at combustion.
Did you just put your face in like a ham? Why is it so greasy?
No, you gotta oil it up. You gotta. This is just beard 101. You gotta oil slick that shit.
I'll condition at most. I don't know, oiling it up. I mean, okay, whatever. I've heard that. Yeah,
do not get a match near this thing because. I do not blow out birthday candles anymore. Not ever since that day.
That fateful day.
No, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about. Well, this is the podcast where we typically talk about Street Fighter stuff.
Yeah, and I'm a Street Fighter player. I did. I was once in the scene, pretty active.
Yeah. You're fairly active. You know what you're talking about.
I was 129th at Evo last year.
That's a high number. That's higher
I got
than
five Pro Tour points. I was on the leaderboards for a hot second for Season 2, Street Fighter 5.
Damn.
Second.
I didn't have that many points. But
and now nobody does because they changed all that.
Yeah, they changed it's impossible to get points anymore. Yeah. But with that in mind,
that's not what we're here to talk about. We're talking about other horrific things.
We tried to
not the CPT.
That's a whole other horror story.
Show all itself.
Yeah, all on its own. But what we're here to talk about, though, is I pitched to you I have a script here working in ways that we can talk about horror movies very, very loosely based on Street Fighter things and Street Fighter related. But before we hit record on this, though, and this is not listed in the things we were going to talk about, we were talking about the horror costumes, the Halloween costumes, and how they just all released at once for Street Fighter 4.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, there was a Halloween pack in Street Fighter 4. I think it came in the Ultra days, right? And then, just everybody got one, and you just bought it all at once, and it wasn't so piecemeal. And they were so good. They are so good in Street Fighter 4. Yeah. Oh, they're just all like Geef, Grim, like the Grave Digger,
the Undertaker's
Undertaker. Yeah, it looked like Undertaker. Oh, I loved it. And then Dimitri, and then we were saying earlier about how they really should have just done a Darkstalkers pack in Street Fighter 5, but they never did. They're just doing them here and there. Like the first one, unofficially, was like Ryu's Halloween was kind of like Bishamon.
Yeah, a little bit, but not quite.
Yeah, not quite.
They didn't call it
adjacent.
That. Yeah.
And I'll be fine to call it that. But then in like Street Fighter 4, the first hints at something like that were you had Bison, he was so close to being Dimitri. Very close, not quite there. And Cammy, the Killer Bee, she had a QB costume. It made so much sense. It made so much more sense than Ed as Dimitri, but I don't make those choices at Capcom. So don't listen to me, whatever. I just, supervise California haunts and whatever.
It's hard to tell, which actually, by the way, I like to open up my show instead of closing the show, pitching like, hey, what do you got going on? I like to put that right up front. So I guess I'll ask you then, what do you have going on that you might want to direct people towards?
Well, it's funny. I'm redesigning my online presence. So under construction on a lot of those kind of things. But by career and by what I actually do outside of the FGC is I am a voice actor, commercial actor, and currently I'm also very engaged in the haunt scene out here in Southern California, as a willing participant mostly, and then also on the other side, on the performance side, and on the administrative side as well. I supervise at Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios. This is like my third year participating in that. I also do, my girlfriend and I, we also do the extreme haunts all up and down Southern California, the ones where they give you a safe word and you give them permission to touch you, and sometimes you get slapped on the face with a dead fish, like I did at 17th Door a couple of years ago.
That actually sounds all right. They make you sign like a waiver, right?
Yeah, and some of them are. I mean, we could have a whole podcast on that alone. But
just like horror houses, like
horror houses, yeah, haunts. It's funny, regionally, like out here we call them haunts, but I think the rest of the country just says haunted house.
Yeah,
like a haunted house, the walk-through haunted house. But we just short
call it a haunted house.
Well, haunt sounds way cooler.
It kind of does. When you just said it, like you said it with such confidence that I was like, I think I know what a haunt is, but I'm not cool enough. I just call them haunted houses, which side note, I'm going to spin off that story into like something again that we didn't have written down. But have you watched Haunting of Hill House?
I started it last night. I watched episode 1 last night.
It's real good.
So I'm not far into it.
We won't be spoiling any of that, but if you have a Netflix subscription, you guys should watch that. It's very good.
Yeah. That's not for me. That's for you guys. Because I got it. I'm starting.
It's very good. I want to talk about it so bad because I just binged it last weekend to be like, oh, damn, like this is something to have on. And then I was just like enthralled by it because the acting's so good. It does the thing that good horror does of tying in the message that they want to say with the horror elements of what people are actually afraid of that thing in real life, and then making that manifest through something spooky.
Mm-hmm.
And it does that in the spades. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about Street Fighter.
Street Fighter, kind of.
Adjacent. So here's how it's going to go. I'm going to say a thing. I'm going to prompt a question of, here's something that is in Street Fighter, and here's how it can be related to a horror movie, and what is your favorite thing within that horror movie. So right at the top of the show, I should say, spoiler alert. We're going to be talking about spoilers. I'm going to list all of the movies that we talk about in the show notes. It'll be right up front, kind of unlisted, just listed out, just all of the movies by probably alphabetically, although that seems hard. And then it'll list like the categories that we put them into. So just to be clear, if you see anything there that you haven't seen, and you want to watch it before you listen to this, it is there. So look at those names. This is your warning.
Some of these movies are old.
Yeah,
but whatever.
That's the other thing. They're all very old, for the most part. Now that I think about it, what is the most
oldest
recent
that we'll probably talk about is, there's 1933. I'm looking at one of them from 1933.
Right.
Maybe in a couple 1931s, 32s, in the Todd Browning Universal era.
Actually, no. The one thing, when was... Sorry, I have to Google this right now because I don't have the IMDb page up. Okay, no, 2015. We're going to mention something from 2015. Is the most recent. But only briefly. But
I know which one you're talking about, too.
Yeah, without further ado, we're going to get into it. And the first category is, hey, Cody plays with the knife, and Vega has a claw knife. It's basically 3 knives tied to his fist. So what's your favorite horror movie featuring knife murder?
Wow, it's funny. And as you were saying that, Cody pretty much is, he's the escaped convict stabbing people with knives. He's Michael Myers. He's Michael Myers.
He could be.
But I'm not a Michael Myers fan. Ooh, sorry. I actually, my favorite horror movie featuring a knife murderer is Child's Play. Hands down. Hands down, Child's Play.
When you had written this down, I had never, that was hard for me to admit that I had never watched a Chucky movie. I had never seen Child's Play. So I went back and watched this and was delighted. I thought I would be terrified, but it's just delightful.
It's delightful. Yeah, it's got like, I mean, and I think like, I mean, looking back in 1988. So the thing that I love about Child's Play is, and here's actually, let's just talk about horror in general, horror and sci-fi. This is something that a lot of the old masters knew, like Rod Serling knew this, and Todd Browning knew this, and James Whale knew this. Is that it's very easy to map societal issues. You map it over with a horror story, and get your allegory across. And, Child's Play is sort of that thing. Like, it came at just that right time, right? The late 80s. It was 1988. And it's, the end. It was made at the end of the Reagan eras, and it debuted at the beginning of the Bush Senior era. And it's just that, that 80s consumerism. It's that Reaganomics. It's like
the max.
Death by, yeah, exactly. It was death by consumerism, literally. It's that must have, that Christmas rush toy coming to kill you, and it's that obsession coming back to kill you.
It is the friend doll coming at you.
Exactly.
The child had to have, or else he wouldn't be happy, and she wasn't going to be a good mom unless she got it for him.
Exactly. She went to a street peddler. She went to a guy behind her office in like some, South Loop Chicago alleyway, and was just like, yeah, that's it. That's the one. Her friend was actually trying to talk him down. Remember that? She was actually trying to like haggle him down. Like, it was like, no, I think she pays like $30 for it. It was like, dude, that's a $200 doll. Don't ruin this for Mrs. Barkley.
Where'd you get it? Don't ask where I got it.
Exactly. That's the original Andy Barkley, the first Andy whose toy came to life.
So about the child actor, though, that was the one blight upon this movie, I feel.
Alex Vincent, the actor who played Andy.
Yeah, I thought it was real bad. I don't think his performance holds up, man.
I think some of it does. I think there's scenes in like the mental hospital.
For it, then. I think it's worthwhile to make your case for it.
Yeah, I think in the mental hospital, there's one scene where like I was like, that's a child crying. That's a child. He turned his head. He wasn't crying, and he turns back, and now he's crying. I was like, okay. I think that was pretty captivating. Otherwise, I kind of see what you're saying. I kind of do, but I love Catherine Hicks and Chris Sarandon. I almost said Susan Sarandon. No, Chris Sarandon.
Okay, you know what? I will somewhat agree with you. That moment of Andy, or the part where at the very beginning where he's making breakfast and he like fucks up the breakfast real bad.
Yeah,
like, and I say that as someone who. I have a much younger brother who, like, he was very young when I was in high school, and like one thing that he would do, like if he were to like open up a bag of cereal, like the first person to open up the cereal, he would fuck it up so hard.
Oh yeah, where everything goes flying,
or just like, you know how like if you fuck up a cereal and it's like it's hanging on one edge or something, like something about the way that kid is like pouring cereal and pouring milk out. I was like, okay, I can relate to a kid trying to do something that is like technically very simple, but like, oh, he's just fucking it up. All right.
Right. It's like you don't have to turn the gallon of milk upside down. It'll come out. It'll come out.
But it's too heavy. He has to hold it that way.
It's one of those movies that I feel in the modern and it is a modern film. I mean, it's 30 years old this year, but it's a modern horror film. And I feel in the modern era, it works all the right pieces just correctly. Like the whole ideas of like Jason being supernatural and Michael Myers having supernatural elements, those are all sort of like afterthoughts. But with like Child's Play, it had more of a grounded foot in this. Like, it opens up and he's like, he's a real. They even give him like a real serial killer sounding name, the Lakeshore Strangler. And he's Brad Dourif, and he looks like Tommy Wiseau in the room. He looks exactly like Tommy Wiseau in the room, and he's surrounded by real. Like you can see, it's like this is like a very real. It looks very, very real, and then all of a sudden, you throw in this voodoo and worship to a voodoo god named Damballa. It has one foot in the supernatural, one foot out in the like real world, like, very like, Ted Bundy-ish world of serial killers. And it felt so good. It didn't start taking itself it didn't take itself too seriously, but it certainly didn't start making fun of itself like it would later with like Bride of Chucky.
Yeah,
and
it still held on to elements that kept it pretty grounded. I'll say. And the things that maybe most impressed me, well, specifically when you said knife, like this being knife murder, I didn't realize that Chucky had like a very specific voodoo knife. His knife is so iconic.
It's awesome. It's like red. It's got the red and that like little stripe and those little emblems, those little like voodoo emblems and things. And yeah, we forget that Chucky's got it. He's got a knife. You know, he's got like his knife.
He's got his knife. That
his
is
knife,
specifically his knife.
As essential. He's got a knife as essential as, you know, Leatherface has got like a chainsaw. You know what I mean? Or like, yeah. Although it was funny because I feel like he used more like hammers and hooks more in that first movie anyway. But yeah, I love it. And also, here's the thing about Child's Play too, that Child's Play also. I don't want to talk about Child's Play too.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about that.
Yeah. Well, first off, it's funny that now when people talk about Child's Play and also Fright Night, the director of those two movies is named Tom Holland. Now, the name Tom Holland has gotten even more popular nowadays because that's the name of the actor who plays Spider-Man. So it's that's just a side note. That's a little bit of
like inside the biz kind of fun goof that you have going on.
Yeah, exactly. But he does a thing that they do in Street Fighter. We can bring this right back. Oh, wow. Who does the thing that Chucky does? So Charles Lee Ray, Chucky, puts his soul into the body of a doll.
Yeah. And
he's trying to, and if he's in the body too long, it deteriorates and becomes permanent. Mm-hmm. He has to put his consciousness from body to body to body. Who are we talking about?
That's very M.Bison of him.
Very M.Bison.
I didn't think about that until you had brought that up. That's such a good segue. I mean, we're not going to segue into that yet, but like, damn, that's good.
That's a thing.
That's real good.
Street Fighter.
What I love perhaps most about that movie is they blow up 2 buildings. And that was something that if you were to tell me, hey, Child's Play, they blow up not 1 but 2 buildings, I'd like fully blow them up.
And the first one with like Shazam lightning. Yeah, like the first one blows up with magic lightning.
The second one is, I don't think holds up to science, but Chucky turns on the gas of the oven, blows out the pilot light. And like minutes later, has his friend come in with his gun and shoot at him. Yeah,
Eddie Caputo. That's the Eddie Caputo. Yeah.
Yeah, and it blows up the whole goddamn house.
Right. We're like, and Andy is just outside peeing. Yeah. That's all he's doing. And so like, and I love that they switched to like the Evil Dead. They do the Raimi cam, the Evil Dead cam, where it's first person and he's just like running up the stairs, and you know it's something short and wily. Something wily is running up those stairs. And you know Chucky's thinking, oh, I got just enough time for this little kid to finish peeing to blow up this house.
To get this thing going. No, because
let's get it going.
Anytime because they very rarely show like full shots of Chucky moving. There's like one shot that's kind of bad where they use the small I don't know, it just looks very weird because he has that big mask on and the head it's like a second shot. They don't even need to use it really.
Right. Yeah, there's just a couple when he's like, you know, standing upright on the kitchen countertop. That's that actor is Ed Gale. Yeah, he's a little person. He actually lives very close to me right now. He lives maybe like a neighborhood, I think. Yeah, I know. I see on his Instagram he hangs out a lot in North Hollywood, and I'm in Studio City, bordering North Hollywood. Yeah, I hear he's very nice. But yeah, it's not his fault. It's a mask. Yeah, it's just a mask. And it's strange, which is funny because in the later Chucky movies, that's actually one of my biggest problem. But it's from doll to animatronic. Because like when you watch, I like Curse of Chucky, I do, but when you're looking at the animatronic, it's such a stark shift, such like a 180 shift when you're looking at like the camera is pointed at a doll and then maybe it cuts to a person, and then it cuts back to the doll, and it looks so much different, and you're like, okay, that's the animatronic now. I can see that. I can tell.
I think the animatronics in this movie, though, I think they were done well.
Yeah, I think so.
Like, very creepy. Like, when that doll moves its mouth, you go, no. I don't like that.
Right.
I don't like that bit.
I don't like looking into his mouth and seeing teeth and a tongue.
Yeah.
I don't like seeing the tongue move. That's my weirdest part with looking at Chucky is ew, you have a tongue and it's wet. Ugh. You're supposed to just be a plastic doll. Now, of course, there's logic that does not hold up. But like things like, okay, if he's slowly turning into a human,
right,
heart out, beginning with his heart outward, and it takes the whole movie for his heart to become human, mind you.
Right.
The rest of him is just stuffing. How does he have the strength to stand up with those little cotton legs? I don't know.
Voodoo magic.
Voodoo magic. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it because regardless of those little holes, because of course there are those holes.
Right.
I'm not worshiping this movie and calling it a perfect movie, but
I think with most of the horror movies on this list, there's always that caveat of, okay, but like suspension of disbelief here. People. Just a little bit. Nothing that is like world breaking. Like, but if you're in for it for like a penny, you're in for the pound, basically.
Yeah, because like I'm sorry, I can't praise this movie about a voodoo doll, about like a guy putting his soul into a Christmas toy, because there's a couple things that were unrealistic about it.
Right.
No, we're already there. Let's hold hands and walk into this tunnel of darkness together. We're there.
No, but I think that it holds up today. So that was a good pick for best movie with knife murder. My answer to this question, my gut reaction told me to say Halloween, but my heart told me Friday the 13th. The whole trilogy, or the quadrilogy, in fact. I feel like the first 4 movies, that whole block, the whole story that it tells within those first 4 movies, I think work very well together. It is because, at that time, Halloween had just come out and people were like, okay, people are very scared of knife murder right now, because it could go back to like, even like talking about Psycho, if you want to talk about like the very first movie that had like serial killer elements to it, where they like basically show violence that way. But Halloween came out and people were like, okay, how can we make a movie like Halloween without spending a whole lot of money, that's just as scary, or like at least fun? And I think that is the big differentiator for me when it comes to the difference between Halloween and Friday the 13th, is that right off the bat, I feel like Friday the 13th just was having more fun with it. But to reel back, I like the first. I like the first one because I actually, again, this is another situation where I hadn't been introduced to it until much later in life. Where if you are someone who hasn't watched the first Friday the 13th movie, go back and watch it now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's your warning, because Jason isn't in it.
He's not the killer.
He's not the killer.
Killer.
It's Mrs. Voorhees is the killer, and it was that element of mystery where I was like, wait a minute, why aren't they showing Jason here? Because Jason's supposed to be the killer that I know as an adult man. Why is it just this murderous knife hand anytime that a murder happens? Or why is it, Kevin Bacon getting stabbed through the neck in a very good... That particular kill was...
Yeah. Kevin Bacon's in that movie, too.
Yeah. Not the first Bacon we're going to talk about tonight, also. We should mention. This is your first showing of Kevin Bacon.
I'm scrolling ahead because I'm like, what else? What else is he? Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I see it.
He's down that list somewhere.
Down on the bottom.
He gets murdered in a great way. He's laying in the bed. The hand comes around, and then the arrow comes through his neck from the other side, and just that practical effect looks really good. I think it holds up. A lot of the practical effects still hold up in this movie, but it's basically a mystery, and I didn't know that.
It's a little bit of a whodunit. And there would be another movie that would, I feel like, take that and also run with it very well, very similar, and that's Sleepaway Camp. But with another twist, but not quite the same type of twist. But that's not on this list, so we're not going to talk too
But
much
the other
about
element
that.
that I love about this is that it takes such an innocent idea, such as summer camp, which that's where kids go. That's where they feel safe and have fun. But then you probably watch this movie, and it did what Jaws did to the beach, to what kids had for summer camp. Of, oh, I'm gonna get a big old kitchen knife across the throat, and I'm gonna die, and that's scary. That's spooky.
Yeah, it is. And I think you were saying earlier about, that it's so much more fun than Halloween. And I think right there, I mean, just the setting kind of hints right at it. It's, Halloween takes place right in the middle of a school year. It's like a school night, even Halloween. And then, just kids at camp. Let's have fun. It's a romp. And they're having dying.
They're having fun. There's a little nudity. There's a little bit of nudity. A little sexy fun in there. The thing that and
it must be punished. It must be punished.
Okay, so that's the element that I was getting to, that I feel like this movie set off that whole puritanical, if you are a teen in a horror movie and if you are a sinner, you will die. Which, thinking about, like, if you like take a look at that and actually think about it for a minute, you're like, you know what, that's kind of actually fucked up. That, like, that's the whole, like, that's the moral of what the killer wants to do, but also this is a gratuitous movie about murder, and there's probably boobs in this movie if they buy into that. And some horror movies get, like, really bad about that.
Right.
Friday the 13th, I feel like, was the first movie that started that really kicked that off of, okay, here's just this murderer from Halloween who just loves to murder. He just murders. That's all he does. But in this one, there's that motive of, you're busy doing your jazz cigarettes and kissing each other in the under tents. So
your swing cabbage.
Yeah, your swing cabbage. And so you clearly just have to be stabbed by a pitchfork, and it's like, well, okay,
right? Because you were fornicating when my son Jason was drowning, and you did nothing about it.
And that's that kicks off the whole Friday the 13th business. And the part of it that gets me is that, I don't know, there's something a little gross about that. Something a little gross about that whole exploitative, like, we're going to use this puritanical edge to it, but then also be a movie that totally is self-aware about that.
Yeah. It's almost like, in the same way that, this is going to be very, sorry if this is too old a reference or too above the audience's head, but it's sort of in that same way that where the TV show All in the Family lasted for like 13 years. But the thing about it was, CBS was trying to figure it out, because, like, in 1971 they were like, okay, why do people like the show? Let's figure it out why. And it rated equally on both sides of the political spectrum, because you had on the liberal side, people were saying, well, yeah, Archie Bunker is clearly a satire, a spoof of right-wing conservative politics, and we can point at him and he's an effigy of it. And then the conservatives were like, no, but he's also saying, he's representing us on prime time. So it's like, you got something for everybody. And it's sort of the same thing with now coming back to Friday the 13th. I hadn't
considered it that way, but it kind of does have it both ways.
Yeah, it just sits there right in the middle, where it's like, if you want to watch, premature sex get punished and drug use get punished, you can do that if that's your thing. If you really need to see that, you can watch that. Or, you can just kind of watch this, like, slightly 1 year pre-Reagan, lampoon of the conservative ideology kind of play out. It's like, I mean, then we can, then you can kind of, everyone can point across the aisle and laugh at the other person, where it's like, hi, you're having sex and you're dying. And then everybody else can be like, yeah, but look, you're fucking Pamela Voorhees. You're a crazy
Right.
woman. You're a crazy woman with a knife.
But what I love about that is that the whole it doesn't get away from that either, because it sticks right in that pocket, because it goes from Friday the 13th and then it goes right into part 2. Part 2 picks
right
up
into it.
immediately following part 1. Like, it is seconds later. It's like they kept the film rolling.
Yeah.
Because at the end there's that like dream sequence that I read somewhere that they weren't going to include the dream sequence at the end of Jason, like child Jason coming out of the water.
Right. It was a producer. It was a producer who wanted it, that that said we need one more shock.
Yeah,
one more shock.
One last thing. Like, we're making a talkie picture. We gotta sell it to the kids at the end. We gotta spook them. But honestly, that's kind of how it was. Like, I'm pretty sure that they didn't want to include that and that wasn't in the script originally.
Right.
But with that in mind, that kind of set off the whole Jason business, though, because he comes back in the second one, but this time, like, he's wearing the sack on his head.
He's got the burlap sack. Yeah.
He's kind of like bumbling around. He's not like a strong killer at all. He's kind of just like,
but he's quick. But he's like fast,
He's
and it's not
fast.
like he's like running.
yeah, he's not
And
like
he's
he's not a slow, like, I'm gonna get you. There's one moment where he's slow, and it's. Oh, no, I'm thinking about part 3. I confuse 2 and 3 very often. Very often.
With the exception of the mask.
Yeah, because 3 is when he actually gets the mask, and you have to think about, like, well, what do the murders look like before he gets the mask and then afterwards, but no, you're right. He is like fast, but also he like falls over like a goon. Like, he trips up a lot in this movie, and it like there's that realness to it that it's like, oh, is he like a real person? Like, that's very strange. Yeah. There's that really good wheelchair kill where it's like, oh, here's this very nice young man. I hope nothing bad happens. God,
Yeah, I know.
That's
I gotta say too that the Friday the 13th movies just like really, like, they really didn't hold anything back, like there's like a guy in a wheelchair,
they go for
and they just go for it, and because in your mind, and then here's the thing, in like a modern audience mind, I was watching that, even as a kid, I was like, well, he's gonna be the survivor, he's gonna be the one, like in Silver Bullet. Remember the movie Silver Bullet? It's the kid with the wheelchair, he saves the day. You don't murder someone if you don't murder people in wheelchairs, you monster.
No, he just
like
he gets clocked with a machete, but then Jason lets go of the machete, and he just falls, like, is like flown back. He's like flung backwards off of the porch, and it's like, whoa, okay, I guess that's the direction we're going. All right,
like that. Okay, all right, we're in it now.
Then
we're both feet in.
So 2 ends, and you know who the murderer is the whole time. 3 begins. It was actually originally pitched as like a 3D movie.
Yes.
So it has a lot of kills that are all like, whoa, what if I hold this pole out here? What if something, wouldn't it be terrible if something flew at the camera?
And now I'm the victim. Ooh, it's coming right at me.
Yeah. But that does lead to a fairly good kill where he has the crossbow on the side of the lake, and the girl's just like, oh, because he thinks that it's her friend because he had stolen his Jason, the like actual hockey mask this time. So she's like, oh, my friend was wearing that before. She's like, cut it out. And then he just very slowly raises the crossbow, shoots it, and then just kind of just drops the crossbow to the side and walks away.
Yeah. You think like, if he has the wherewithal to use a crossbow, I'd hold on to that. You know what I mean? But he's like, nah, no,
I'm good.
I can think of other things to do.
I've done that bit of murder. Let's do another murder.
Right.
It's like he's bored or something. It's like, okay.
Yeah. He's playing like bingo with like kill tactics.
But so 3 isn't necessarily good, but it does have the best theme song of all 3. And if you don't know what it is, turn it on now because it slaps. It holds up. That shit is good. It is thoroughly good.
And we talked about the third movie is where he got the mask, and it's really funny that can we think of any other like any other like in the collective consciousness character like Jason, who we think of him in the third movie going forward. We don't think of, I mean, because obviously he wasn't in the first movie. I mean, he was at the very end. And we don't think of burlap sack Jason. We think of hockey mask Jason. I can't think of a single character like that where he comes in so deep into the franchise. We're like two movies are gone.
Yeah, like the character is introduced, but like wasn't that character yet until the third film.
All right.
Yeah,
like
I
we could
can't
be
think of anything else.
if we could go back in time to like 1981 or whatever for like the second movie, and we're talking about Jason Voorhees, where, you know, you go to a Halloween party with a hockey mask on, people would be like, "That's not Jason. What was it? That's not Jason.
You're a hockey player.
You're just a hockey player with a machete."
Yeah, that's an odd combination. I wonder where you got that idea.
Yeah.
No, but then I think the quadrilogy rounds up pretty nicely in a way that Jason with the hockey mask is then murdered by
Tommy.
Yeah, oh fuck, what's the name of that actor?
Corey Feldman.
Yes, Corey Feldman. He gets murdered by a young Corey Feldman, which is pretty good. He's like wearing a Jason mask himself, but like the actual Jason face mask. It's a very weird scene at the end, but I think it wraps up the quadrilogy. Quadrilogy.
Well. Yeah, like House Party. The House Party quadrilogy.
Yeah,
it's 4 House Party movies,
and they're all fun. They're all fun, right? Like, and that's why when I think of knife murder, my gut might tell me that Halloween is the better movie. That Psycho's probably the best movie, but if I'm gonna be honest, it's Friday the 13th. So we had or did you have an honorable mention for this one?
I didn't really, because I'm sort of with you in there. I mean, Friday, we talked about Friday, we talked about Halloween. I actually just rewatched Halloween last night. I'm not a Michael Myers fan. I don't like Michael Myers. He doesn't do it for me. But that first movie it's a butt clencher.
The very first one is good. Anything else that they did after that, I don't think is very good.
Yeah. And there's like moments, but like they always try to explain, like they introduce Michael Myers as this entity of, or what rather, he's just behind those eyes. It's just pure evil. You know, Dr. Loomis is saying, I've never seen a boy, blah, blah, blah. I spent 8 years, what do you say? I spent 8 years trying to heal him and 7 years trying to lock him up and things like that. He was just evil. That's it. And then movies, they started expanding his family tree to include Laurie Strode, and then they started making him actually like an evil entity, like he's like the embodiment of evil, and it got all kind of supernaturally.
Yeah, the more they talk about like his origin, it's the more I stop caring.
The more I don't care. Like Rob Zombie tried to give him like more of a motivation, like a justification. Like he doesn't need to be justified.
Ruins the movie.
Ruins it. You know what he is? He is Jaws. Yeah. That's it. He's the xenomorph in Alien. He is just a force. He doesn't need. I think yes, in general, character development is very good, but it's what role does the character play? Michael Myers is just a force. That's all he needs to be. No more.
Right.
Anyway, Psycho's great.
Yeah, that was my honorable mention, is that Psycho is a very good movie that holds up today. And in the very same way of, I feel like if you have never seen Psycho, listener, and you think that it ends at the shower scene, that is not true. That's not true at all.
Yeah.
It will blow your expectations.
I want to bookmark the term that I'm about to use. I like calling those like those little gear shifts. It has a great gear shift. And it's one of the earliest movies to have a gear shift, because Janet Leigh was a big star at the time. She was a bigger star than Anthony Perkins.
Jamie Lee Curtis's mom also, by the way.
Jamie Lee Curtis's mother, by the way. Yeah, married with Tony Curtis. So Janet, you know, and it's all she's on everything. She's on the poster. She was in the advertisements. Yeah. And then the movie switches. And we're talking like maybe like 20 minutes in too.
Yeah, it's fairly quick, and then it becomes a different movie.
Completely different. So I'm going to save that term for gear shifts, because the very, very, very last category is my favorite gear shift, the one I mentioned.
Does it ever?
It's a gear shift.
There is a hard turn, and I would call that the hard turn.
I would say it's like even a harder turn, like given the first.
Oh, God. When it turns, oh boy.
Moments, yeah. But I guess I'll throw it back to you, and I guess we're going to the next one.
Yeah, the next
category,
one,
Psycho.
which we can both talk about together, because we actually had the same answer for this one. So how I tied this one to Street Fighter, which we had a good transition that I had to duff entirely. But M.Bison has psycho power. So what is your favorite psychological horror movie?
We both said Rosemary's Baby.
It holds up, and it is actually probably very relevant to the fears that women might have at this time in like current American culture.
Yeah. There's something, there was definitely, I mean, then and now, but especially then, that was the era this is the 60s. This is 1968. And in the 50s and 60s, you kind of look at like Mad Men, right? Mad Men kind of looked at the same little thing as from a different lens. But what that thing is that, there's like, this seedy undercurrent of violence and horror in domestic life. Spouses are getting beat, people are getting killed, and it's like, and like that's sort of like the metaphor here. It's like, not everything, the life of a housewife, not necessarily that great, huh?
Yeah.
Something
there are certain expectations of you, like the husband expects this of you. You are to have my child, you're fine, stop worrying about it, like
just have the child.
Yeah.
I'll go to work, you raise the baby, and it'll be fine. But it's not that fine.
Yeah, the gaslighting is at like an all-time fever pitch.
Right. Yeah, I like how, exactly I like exactly using that term gaslighting, because that's just what it is. Like, where she's just like, so I have a craving for raw chicken livers. Is that no? That's normal. That's normal.
I'll get that for you, honey. Don't worry about that.
It's fine. There's nothing wrong. I've called the doctor. He's part of the cult too, but whatever.
But that's the kind of the fun about this movie, is that it might play that end a little heavy-handed, but you don't really get that turn that things are actually about the devil until later in the movie. There aren't huge signs other than like she has visions where like all of it could be like all of the things that the people around her in her life are saying to her like could be explained. Like the things that people are telling her, you can tell that she's like, oh, well, yeah, I guess that's real. But also I don't really have a friend in my current life right now. I don't have any lifeline out of here that would tell me otherwise, that, oh, what you're experiencing is not actually good. Like, you need to get out of there. And then like the instance where she might have someone like that in her life, that person is removed from her life.
Right. Where she's just like constantly in this cycle of abuse, and it's like, and there it is. There's, it's metaphorical on the supernatural end of it, but it's also very literal and very realistic, that it's like this hunky-dory domestic life is not so hunky-dory. And it's sort of pulling the wool back, or pulling the curtain back on that sort of, that safe 1960s domestic living lifestyle. Because you got to look at like Rosemary's Baby is coming out at the time when what's on TV, like I Dream of Jeannie. It's like the other domestic supernatural property of the 60s. Yeah,
it makes that into, I guess it kind of would take that as inspiration to be like, okay, if this was where people like and go to feel safe, what if all of this was bad and wrong?
Yeah.
What if like that's not how women should be treated? And what is like the extreme end of that? And what if also you were carrying the actual Christian devil's baby?
Right. Like how many parents have just said to their kids like, "Oh, you're the devil. Oh, that's the devil." And it's like, well, yeah, this time you're right. Yeah. And I think it's just an example, sort of like, again, like we were saying earlier, that horror and sci-fi gives ample elbow room to map these sort of issues, to map like these horrific circumstances on top of these like, societal issues, and just sort of explore, it's like, it's heavy-handed, but it works.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes it so effective. And again, I think that this movie holds up today. Like,
Yeah.
you could watch it now because the cinematography is still really good. There's a lot of good use of practical, like, there's a lot of good use of green fog, oddly enough, that works for me. The sound is really good too. The sound in this movie is very unsettling.
It is, yeah.
The times where they choose to use silence is like, oh, okay.
I was just about to say that the absence of sound at some points, and in the 60s, that wasn't really like, and it makes sense that it's coming from Roman Polanski. That's more of a European thing. American movies, especially at that time, were just like, pumped full of sound, constant soundtrack. So to remove it, it's like, oh, this is haunting.
So yeah, go check it out. What was or did you have a honorable mention here?
I had an honorable mention in Night of the Hunter. I mean, it's not really a psychological horror film. It's more of like a tense, taut thriller. But there's just these extended moments of like, but the tension is so tense that you really just do kind of, you're just wondering. It's like, wait, is this ever just like in the what is this? Is this real? Is this not real? But I'm gonna actually change it. I want to change it up a little bit because I know I like your Jacob's Ladder, but you know what I watched recently that doesn't it does change. It's totally a psychological horror movie, and that is Exorcist 3.
Okay, so I have not seen past just The Exorcist, so you're on your own on this one.
So The Exorcist is very much like a supernatural drama horror. Exorcist 2, just forget, it doesn't even matter. Exorcist 3 is actually the only one based on, that's the actual sequel.
Oh,
because
wait a minute. Go ahead. Because I think I do know parts about 3.
I think some of it has gotten very popular, especially throughout. It's gotten more of a cult following. It got downplayed at the time it came out because it was called Exorcist 3.
That makes sense.
Exorcist 2 was such a bomb. William Peter Blatty, who is the author of the original book and the book that inspired Exorcist 3, which is called Legion, he wanted to just call it Legion because that's the title of the book that it's based on, Legion. And that is a sequel to The Exorcist, but the studio was like, no, we'll call it Exorcist 3. And he warned them, and he said, it's just going to fail because people only remember Exorcist 2. It's going to fail. And then they had total amnesia about it, and guess what happened? But it's very different. It's very good. So the whole premise of it is the night that Regan was exorcised and the demon Pazuzu was removed from her body was the same night that a serial killer named the Gemini Killer was executed. So what happened was the demon Pazuzu was basically trying to, get one last act of like little vengeance, whatever. So the demon Pazuzu left Reagan's body, basically took the Gemini Killer's soul en route to the afterlife or whatever, and put it into the body of Damien Karras, Father Karras, the young priest that gave his life
that
to
finishes,
that finished it. So it becomes this. So it's more of it's a detective story from the point of view of Lieutenant Kinderman, who was the detective in the first film, played by Lee J. Cobb. In this film, Exorcist 3, he's played by George C. Scott. And so it's him like kind of following like these like little clues. He knows that he thinks the Gemini Killer is back, but he was for sure executed. And who's playing the Gemini Killer? Brad Dourif, Chucky, in one of like the most most fantastic performances I've ever seen in a horror film, certainly from Brad Dourif, who had previously, he has an Academy Award nomination from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, so he's a good actor, and he's been a good actor his whole life. But it's just this insane, like you said, psychological drama, like a psychological thriller. Who is the Gemini Killer? Who is doing the killings? From where are the killings emanating from? And it has some like really great visuals because most of it is set in a mental hospital too. So you just get like this creepy, like almost Silent Hill vibe. Also like that. Have you ever played the video game Clock Tower?
Yes.
With the guy with the giant shears. Totally
I'm
ripped
looking
from
at images and
3.
stills from The Exorcist 3, and there's a lot of shears being they're front and center.
Front and center. They are that clock tower gimmick totally ripped from Exorcist 3, and it is tense. It is fucking insane.
Well, good. I might check that out then, because like The Exorcist 2 that's a trip.
Garbage. It's garbage. Exorcist 2, The Heretic, is garbage.
Yeah. But yeah, so my honorable mention here was Jacob's Ladder, which is, I think it's a very good example of, like, I mean, spoiler alert for Jacob's Ladder, but like what someone might see the moments before they die, or like regrets that they might have made manifest through hallucinations in the moments before death.
And to imagine an entire life after the moment of death, like seeing death coming and then saying, and then everything that you've just witnessed is an imagination beyond the moment.
Yeah, living out through that. Insane. It also has some really cool shots. The one of the guy who's doing the twitching, which they filmed it at a very, what is it? They filmed it at a really low frame rate, and he did that and then sped up that footage. So like it got that shakiness to it where it only picked up when he was in certain... The old film techniques like that are very fun to notice and be like, well, how the fuck did they even film that? Mm-hmm. You don't think about that so much in the digital age. You just be like, oh, it's just edited that way.
It's just edited, yeah, exactly. But because that technique was a big body, it was popular in body horror. Mm-hmm.
Because they used it in... Did they use it in Ring? The first, like the Japanese Ring?
They may have. It's been a while since I've seen the
original. But all right, regardless, we can move on to the next topic then. We've covered our honorable mentions. Yeah,
I do want to also highlight that Tim Robbins kills it.
Extremely good performance. This is another issue where someone is like, things seem fucked up, but everyone is telling me things are not fucked up, but I am not okay. Like in this whole situation, like I have to let people know that I'm not okay with any of this. I think the part that quite well.
There's a part that actually made me tear up, which was where when he finds the picture of his son, who's played by Macaulay Culkin, a very, very young Macaulay Culkin. I think pre Uncle Buck, definitely pre Home Alone. And he just like looking at it and just starts weeping, and his girlfriend, who's Maria Pena. She just like looks at him and like sort of like starts like berating him or something, but then like sees what it is, and it's like, oh, that's a really heavy moment.
Yeah, it gets real on a couple of different issues where you're just like, oh, I feel bad for this guy.
Yeah,
and then it does not end well for that entire situation. But okay, next bit though. So Guile has a zombie alt now, and Nash is kind of a zombie. It's a good alt.
Plus all the zombie costumes from the Halloween pack of Street Fighter 4. So many zombies.
Yeah, and there are a lot of zombies there. So what's your favorite zombie movie? This was another one where we were in agreement.
My first favorite zombie movie is actually my third favorite movie, period.
Really?
And that's Night of the Living Dead, 1968. Yeah.
It's so good. It's a very slow movie, so if you're watching it thinking, "Oh, it's good," like the zombies that I know of today, it is very, very slow paced, but it is that slow churn that really makes this movie.
Yeah, and that it is never about the monster. It is never about the monster. It is, it's a very human drama. The things that people like praise or used to praise The Walking Dead for
after the first episode. My guy.
Yeah, like
show does not hold up to any criticism in my opinion.
But yeah, like people like in the earlier days of 2010 Walking Dead, people were like, well, it's the human drama is so engaging. This was the movie that kind of put that there on the map. It didn't invent the concept of the zombie. It didn't.
No, but it's Zombie, I think.
The Italian film. There's the Italian film. No, the Italian film. We can talk about that later. That's actually the We'll get into that. We'll get into that. There's some really interesting. This is the thing we're talking about with like, but there was like movies like White Zombie, starring Bela Lugosi.
Oh, you're right. So,
yeah, you know, there were movies that starred zombie, and then plus the whole myth of the zombie had been established.
It predated.
But this predated this movie. But what this movie did, it didn't even call them zombies. First off, in the script, they're called ghouls. Romero he wasn't really focused on like a zombie this or that. He was just like, well, they're just reanimated corpses. They're ghouls. Mm-hmm. They're eating human flesh. They're ghouls. But what he introduced, or at least reinforced, was the notion that when you're bitten, it's infectious. And that is really like where things start to come together, and where this starts feeling like for all modern zombie movies.
Yeah, it really sets that in motion, and really it solidified the quote unquote zombie in popular culture, even though it wasn't called zombies at the time. But what I think where he really succeeded with this movie, that I don't know gets played out or people talk about that often, but the main actor is a black man. Mm-hmm. And at that time, it was kind of, I mean, what year was this? Of a black man leading role with like other white people in the movie, and then how that movie ends,
and being the stalwart one, the go-getter, and also nobody in the movie questions him.
No,
you know, he's just an African American man, and he's just taking charge. We're all human. You know,
and I remember reading that he was hired for that job, and people asked Romero, so like, why did you hire a black guy? Was that on purpose? He says, no, he was just the best actor.
Yeah.
That I could hire, just straight up.
It's like, wow, yeah. It's like he's just the best person, and
then it kind of the way that movie ends too is like, well, they just shoot him. They just shoot him.
From a distance.
They don't get close.
They don't get close. They make a judgment from afar. They say, pull the trigger. All right, wipe our hands clean. We're done here.
Yeah, end of movie.
It's heavy.
Yeah, especially after what you go through to get to that point, and what he has gone through to be like, oh, he has tried so hard to maintain everyone's humanity here. He has tried to keep this small house of people sane in this like broken world now, and then to just end like that is like, that's a good horror movie trope to end on a downer.
Yeah, to end on the downer, but then also like with such, like we were saying before, like such societal and socioeconomic heaviness to it. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, because we're just going to clean up the zombie mess is the idea we're getting at the end, that there's, you know, these droves of human, you know, whatever, surviving people just picking off the zombies, cleaning up the mess. It seems very temporary. Mm-hmm. It doesn't seem like an apocalyptic situation. And we're just going to go back to life. And that life is pretty hard right now. It's the 60s, and we're not as far along as we think we are.
Yeah. And we're just going to make this decision from pretty far away, and not even try to reach out and say hello. They don't even try. It's just,
no, they don't.
One in the house over there. All right. Add them up.
Yep. Add them up. Throw it on the pile.
What I will say about this movie, fun fact, is that the part that really did it for me, specifically the opening scene of the cemetery, was actually filmed in the Mars Cemetery, which is where I grew up. That's the town I grew up.
No kidding.
Yeah, so we would like hang out there around like Halloween time. We would at least hang out near the woods that are like right outside of like the limits of that cemetery, and it's like kind of creepy down there. Yeah, it was like one of those things that I was like, oh, I know this place. And then the house where this is filmed is actually like kind of down the road from like where my buddy lives, and it was always like together in that package of, because Romero was he from Pittsburgh, or did he just film a lot in Pittsburgh? Because
Pittsburgh area, Monroeville.
Yeah.
What was that?
Because his movie immediately following this, Martin, about the dude who's like a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's called Martin.
Which I've never seen, actually.
It's quite good. Yeah, Martin, because that's another movie where it actually is not clear whether or not he is actually a vampire or just likes to kill.
Right.
And there's a very good argument in that movie where he's like, it's not magic. None of this is magic. This is just what it is. Like, it's like, okay, this movie got deep. But anyway, but it was like film that like takes place in and around Pittsburgh.
Right.
But like, this was the first time where I was like, oh man, that's a place that I can very easily get to, and it's a spooky thing, and it's Halloween, and we're gonna go get spooked, guys. Guess what? Time for everybody to get spooked.
I thought, what a great little landmark too. Like, because I just think of that zombie. I think of the cemetery so clearly of like Barbara and Johnny. Because in Rocky Horror Picture Show, Brad and Janet look just like Barbara and Johnny. Very
yeah,
much.
that is true.
It. But so I almost said Brad. But yeah, Barbara and Johnny, and I just hear like they're coming to get you, Barbara. Think of it very clearly. Wow,
it's very good.
Now you're mentioning zombie. Okay, so here's a little fun thing about zombie. We can relate this a little bit to Boxer Dictator Claw, if you want to talk about a little bit of Street Fighter in there. But zombie. Okay. So in Italy, where copyrights are, especially in the 70s, copyrights were very tenuous. Dawn of the Dead was released over there as Zombie. Now we're talking about the actual zombie. I'm sorry, the actual Dawn of the Dead sequel, Romero's sequel.
Released just ZOMBI, no E.
Yeah, I think so. Yes. I believe so. Okay, I will defer to you. And then it was just released over there as Zombie. So Lucio Fulci, a filmmaker, he made a movie called Zombie 2, which was his unofficial sequel to Dawn of the Dead. We're going to talk
about Lucio Fulci, Zombie 2?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Zombie 2 was released over here as Zombie, the unofficial sequel of Dawn of the Dead, aka Zombie 1 in Italy. And so then they also made Zombie 3, which was the sequel to Dawn of the Dead sequel, but it was released over here as just Zombie 3. So we never got a Zombie 2 because Zombie was Zombie 2 and Dawn of the Dead was Zombie 1. Very much, and it reminds me, it's a little bit of like little name roulette, like musical chairs with M.Bison, Vega, Balrog.
Okay, I can buy
bit,
that. But Zombie
bit.
2 is like that's a ridiculous movie.
Yeah,
none of it makes sense.
I barely remember it. I got to admit, but I just remember like it's so visceral. All of them are.
It's great. It's great. But it is a very Lucio Fulci film. If anyone has followed his career,
you guys, you should definitely see like I Spit on Your Grave and Zombie 1 with like there's a great eyeball kill where like a zombie just like pulls this girl's head, like her eyeball right on this like sharp piece of metal. Maybe it was a needle. I can't remember now. It was something sharp. Yeah. And the shot composition, it sticks with you.
We'll be talking about needles in eyes later on in this show. Not the first needle in eye we're going to be talking about.
Right, definitely not.
So my honorable mention here was Wreck, the 2007, the original, not the English remake with Deb from Dexter, not that one. That's right. Which was
not Quarantine,
not that movie, Wreck. Because personally, I have a huge soft spot for found footage movies.
Do you?
I know
do.
That.
Okay.
I like them in a bad way, in a way where I will watch all of them, and a part of me will be like, "Ooh, I'm spooked," but like, I like knowing that most of them are not good. Most of them, but there's a part of me that likes that certain handheld motion to it. Wreck, I think, has very good cinematography for being on a handheld kind of view. There's really good shot composition. There's like really tense dialogue. Moments where like things that they don't show are like, oh, you can tell from this actor that he's holding a gun even if you don't see a gun. Specifically where he's like holding those people in that room, like back away, like before you even like see him brandish it, just like the physicality to it in that room is like, oh, okay, like this is how this is going to be now. And I feel like that movie is visceral in that way. But
and
that
I think
was
like
my honorable mention. Worth watch.
Once it hits, because I just saw this movie for the first time last week and I loved it.
Yeah.
And when you're watching the reporter and you see those first moments where like she's at the firehouse and like getting cozy with the firefighters.
Yeah, it's very
I just feel like it's very real and it's very well paced. Like it doesn't just like, but when it slams on you, it slams hard. It looks for that opening and just hits you with it, and then it doesn't stop. Mm-hmm. And that's what I really love about it. Like I love how it's just like this very patient pace, and then all of a sudden it just beats you over the head with like nonstop.
When shit hits
tension.
The fan, it is tense the whole time.
Yeah. And desperation feels like desperation.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm a big fan. So like I have a writing they're trapped. And I have a writing background. And I was doing a lot of comedy, and there's comedy and horror both have a very similar rules. It's like in terms of like rhythm and space and like pacing and also like setting, and in both horror and comedy, setting is very clutch when you can figure out a way to just have set in one location, unable to leave. You know what I mean? Like put them in an elevator, put them in a building, put them on a boat. Is this a comedy or is it a horror film? I guess either way, it depends what's happening. but it's the start.
Trap them in a situation.
Of trapping them in a situation. It's the start of something good. You know what I mean? As long as it's justified. As they're justified, they shouldn't be able to just leave and are just choosing not to leave. No. Let's trap these characters there. See what happens. And record.
And then write characters that would interact with each other well. Don't write interactions, write characters that would
who are these people
well with each other.
Yeah, who are these people? Why are they there? Why can't they leave? Etc. Record does that so wonderfully.
Mm-hmm. And then your answers here in honorable mention.
I want to talk about Shaun a bit later.
Okay, that's fine. I want to talk about that. That's correct. You're correct in saying that. We have a category coming up here that I think it definitely fits.
Yeah, I want to talk. I'll put that later, but I do want to say Cargo. It's a Netflix original. It stars Martin Freeman. It came out this year, so actually this is the most recent one. So if you guys have not seen Cargo, it's a feature-length movie on Netflix. Maybe this is the one you want to avoid the spoilers on. But it's based on. I'm sorry. It's an adaptation, a feature-length adaptation of an Australian short film that I believe won some awards, but I couldn't tell you what or when. It was a few years old, like 2013, something like that, where basically it's this short film of this guy, and he's wearing his baby. He's wearing his baby in like a little the little pouch, little strap, whatever that thing, the baby carrier, a baby character, papoose. Yeah, Piers Morgan. It's a papoose. And some men wear papooses.
Fuck that guy.
I know, right? But anyway, so it's and the guy is slowly dying. He's dying because he's been bitten by a zombie. So he's transforming. So he kind of puts like a little carrot in front of the horse. He rigs up this little thing of like a piece of rotting meat or human meat or whatever above his head. And he's like strapped notes on his body. So forever, whoever finds him, whoever kills him can look at the body and see these notes, see this baby. And basically he knows he's going to die, but it's his child. He's trying to protect his child. He doesn't want, as a zombie, he doesn't want to die and then turn around and eat his own baby. So he distracts himself on this like endless walk, this zombie carrying this living baby. And it's a gorgeous short film. And Netflix budgeted it and produced it and turns it into a feature-length movie called Cargo, and it's pretty good.
Wow.
It's pretty good. I honestly think the short film just kind of cuts to the chase. That's a little better.
Yeah.
Because it's a short film. So it doesn't have all the other stuff, all the like moments of peril and what's going to happen.
Yeah, there's no fat.
There's no, yeah. And Cargo has a little of that. It's sort of like, okay, I know what's going to happen, so let's just get to it. But all said and done, I love Martin Freeman. And I love this cast, and I love the premise. And I thought, what a fun, intimate portrayal in the largely overdone zombie subgenre. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I really liked it.
All right. Okay. Well, actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to split this up into 2 spooky parts.
Let's do it. Let's get spooky.
Story told in 2 spooky parts because we're...
Spoopy.
Yeah, because it's going to... I can envision this going places. And because of that, just going to cut it, and we're going to come right back in part 2. So stick with us, folks. We'll be back.